What should I do? How does it happen? What is the roadmap? These are few of many questions that trouble early career professionals. Early Career Talks is an initiative to exactly bridge that gap between people who are in their early career and the industry. Saturday 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. as part of these Early Career Talks, industry veterans are invited and they share their knowledge so that the early career professionals get benefited and their doubts gets clarified. Stay till the end and you will know how you can be part of this community so that you don't miss any early career talks and also all the initiatives that are taken by the company behind this early career talks, Balemarthy Vamsi Enterprises. Stay till the end and you will know how you can take your early career to the next stage. And I strongly believe early career should become a launch pad and a stepping stone for a bright mid-career and prosperity. Thank you very much.
Just about. If you
So
could share me.
demography of the audience?
Yeah. Like students or more people, just for me
Yeah,
to.
multiple.
Right. Okay. Is it good for me to start?
Yeah, please.
Oops. Right. So today I wanted to talk about future-proofing embedded careers. I would like to mostly touch upon more on the current trends and tools that I have come across. It's more of a personal experience, and I think it would really be helpful for someone who's still early in their career, wondering what is it really like industry, and especially for students, because when I used to be back in university, had really amazing professors were excellent in teaching me the concepts, but there was always a gap about what was happening in this industry and how does it get translated to. And even they are recently when I had a chance to go back to my university for another talk, they were asking what about the microcontrollers, what technologies that are currently being in demand or what's coming up. And I think a similar thing. So in terms of agenda, I would probably touch a little bit about me, a quick brief capture on some of the projects I worked on and some of the tools that pretty much use in everyday life, and more of my journey in embedded careers of how things kept changing, even though it was not a long career, but even within the short period of time, you could see certain things have changed, certain things have evolved, certain things have disappeared, and more about current trends in the industry. And we could have little questions in chat interactively. So about me, so I'm currently working as a senior software engineer for Dyson. I have done my bachelor's in electronics and instrumentation, and I've done my master's in Internet of Things. I have about roughly 6 years of experience in these embedded careers. I'm really passionate about IoT and technologies around it. I feel most of my skills and expertise comes around the part where this IoT device and cloud integration. The support I've really enjoyed, and I think that's something I'm really good at. On the side is some of the logos of the companies I recently worked at. This is what you might have seen in my LinkedIn profile or resume, but there's a bit more of an absurd journey to get where we are. So just some of the recent products and projects that I worked on in my recent companies. The one on the left corner is a demonstrator project. So this was a project for Renesas. So Renesas is a second chip manufacturer, in case nobody knows. So this was a project that based on batteryless devices. They're preparing new series of family of microcontrollers called it's based on SOTB technology, something with silicon oxide. That's for very low power and basically can work without battery. It's not it doesn't work on solar, but it can work on a room that is as bright as where I'm currently standing. But it's that good in terms of harvesting energy and working. It was a new family of microcontrollers, and I was working on that before it was commercially released and into applications. And one on the right is the HID video. Could you see the video?
Yes, we
I
are.
hope you all can see the video. This was my recent work for the last 2 years. It's on the access control devices. It's just coming and tapping in your mobile phone or watch on access control devices, and the data goes all the way to cloud to authenticate if the server has, if the user has access or not, and then it can access or deny permission to a particular floor or a meeting room. It's integrated with Microsoft and several calendars as well. And the one on the bottom right is a project with University of Essex. It's more about conservation of oysters near the Mersey seaside islands. Apparently, due to global warming, the oysters does not reproduce as much as they used to because of the changing temperatures in the water. And a scientist had to build up an IoT device to capture the temperature, the time when the oyster shells open and close, so that they could monitor the reproductive cycle and move them to a much warmer or a cooler part of the sea, so that they could keep certain species of oyster. That was an interesting one. And the last one is the Dyson Supersonic, which I'm currently working on. I'm working on the next generation of these products, the ones that's not in the market yet. Going on, people usually wonder what are the tools they use in a company, in a big company when they're making products, and it's pretty much what's the day is like. This type of a work setting or work culture is something quite modern from the rest of the companies I've worked on as well, and they all work very in an agile way, having a stand-up meeting every morning just to discuss what are the tasks, what are the things that's blocking, and then go on to the code and design review. It's more of a review session, verifying each other's work rather than actual development. And what I've listed here is the tools. I think there's a pointer. The Confluence is also a part of this Atlassian tools where all the documentation happens. I would strongly encourage any students who are working on who have to submit an assignment for interview. They should still use these tools, and all of them are open source and free to use, just to stay relevant to the industry standards and tools. And second is the draw.io and Miro, where all the flowcharts and diagrams are recorded. We also use Altium Designer for reviewing CAD designs, PCB designs, but that's a premium version. There's a much more open source version for KiCad. There's lots of PCB reference designs also available online. To start with, I think something to start, even like a voltage regulator and a converter, would be absolutely amazing. And then there's also Autodesk, which is a CAD design for 3D printing and enclosures, which is also quite used extensively because 3D printers is being used more and more for product prototypes and other things. I think it's great skill. Not in a big company because you have dedicated engineers doing the 3D, but in a startup environment, in a much smaller company, having this range of skills is highly helpful. And then the actual coding part, we obviously Visual Studio and Platform.io, because we use a multiple range of microcontrollers, and to port code from one platform to another, Platform.io code is much easier in the prototyping stage. It's really not the same when you're on the production stage because you're more onto target hardware, product intent code, but at the prototyping stage, at the development stage, platform IO is really installed. You might see Go here, which is increasingly more used, and it's replacing Python everywhere. One, because it can do everything that Python can do in a much more faster and efficient way. So a lot of, because Python is not really meant for running production level code. It's nice for prototyping, helps still being used more in data related areas, but Go is amazing. We use Go extensively, and it's easy to move from prototyping to production. Not just for embedded code. We don't write Go for embedded code, but more for testing, automation, scripting, and supporting embedded development around it. And the thing is AWS IoT, which is the AWS IoT core used extensively. There's not much IoT platforms. Azure archived their, Microsoft archived their IoT platform. Google gave up their IoT platform. So pretty much it's the only robust platform at the moment available is AWS IoT. Not many players come close to AWS IoT. And also for the fact that AWS IoT recently purchased FreeRTOS and they're developing on top of it. So you can see more and more push from AWS on the FreeRTOS side, just because they own it. And in terms of tech stack, C and C++, I haven't coded in C++ at the beginning of my career. It's just that today's microcontrollers are much more capable of. We do C++. We also do some kind of research to run Rust in one of the microcontrollers, but it's still in the research stage, not really into the product stage yet, and more of sprint planning. And this is where project management comes in, using agile planning, those kind of things which we normally don't do. And second is one-to-one. It could be me talking to my seniors, as well as me mentoring my junior engineers who are reporting to me as well. So it's all our teams, and back to the similar stack and demo sessions and training. So the actual part of development is very, very little. The part of the day is most of the time goes into planning and documentation, which is quite different from what I imagined when I was in university of what embedded development would look like. And next thing I will talk about is pretty much my journey into embedded career. 6 years is not too long, but even with that 6 years, there's been quite a lot of trends and changes. It's all over the place. Apologies, but I like to go through one by one. More about the trends and tools. And it's amazing how there's so much mentors and online communities there to guide you. But when I really started my embedded journey, there was not much of a guidance, or I didn't know where to find them. So my source of information used to be is to go and attend interviews and look at things that I don't know. So every time I fail an interview for a reason that I don't know something, and that becomes my list of things that I would learn and go for the next interview. So that's how I identified what are the things that are in demand or required in the industry. It's a very popular saying that there's always more time than what you think. So starting with, I'm gonna go back about 10 years back in second year university, and it's really, I don't know if you can you see my camera? Could anybody respond saying if they could see my camera?
Yes. We can. It's visible. Yeah, you can go ahead.
So this is the first Raspberry Pi I bought in university of second year, and this is at Dyson using the Tiny S3. So that's been the journey between the Raspberry Pi to Tiny S3. In between there's been ESPs, 8266, and NRF dongles. And this is another interesting one from Nordic. which is a development board exclusively for Matter Protocol, which I will summarize stuff later. So starting with at the end of my final year, I had my first ever interview. It's for a medical company based in Chennai, and their CTO called me for the initial screening round, and they used to ask me about RTOS concepts, mutex and semaphores. And I was just about to finish off university, and I had a module called real-time operating systems. So super strong in theory, was able to answer all the questions on the phone, and then he invited me over to the office for an interview. And that's where I met this person, Sid, you can call him Sid, I don't want to reveal the person's full name. The person comes back into the career later on as just a little thing. So with Sid, was a senior engineer, 3 or 4 years older than me, really good engineer, exceptional in what he does. And he asked me questions about real-time operating system on the device level and more on practical aspects, which I had no clue because I never ran a free RTOS or any RTOS in a real-time device, and I couldn't convert my knowledge on theory to the practical thing. And that's one thing I learned, that why RTOS is important, and I didn't make it to the interview in that. And then that is for Mitsil. And then campus placements, normal IT companies, regular IT companies, which few placements came through. I was not a very great at embedded engineering, but the passion was still there. And then there was another startup which was trying to make a product on top of LabVIEW, and they were asking certain money for deposit for the fresh engineers, so that they could hold on to it. And then that obviously was not a dodgy company. And then I had another interview, which I had to travel to Delhi. That was my first project experience for interviews. So the task I was given is to run a Google Home Assistant on a Raspberry Pi to control voice commands to turn on certain devices and something. So I made the project. I went to BBOM. This was in Delhi. You all know BBOM, which is a product review company. But even I got selected with that, but they didn't have any embedded engineering work. It's more of a content development to teach electronics. At that time, I felt that, well, I myself am still in the learning phase, and there isn't much I know to teach, and I should be in a place where I should be learning then rather than teach. So I didn't take it up. And I also tried my luck on the lieutenant entries for the Indian Navy, clearing the physical test. I failed in the medical test. Turns out I had a history of epilepsy when I was little. So that journey ended there. A few months later, so I passed out. It's been like 6-7 months since I passed out. And then what I used to do is do final year projects for my immediate juniors. So I'm not sure how it works in other cities, but in some of the colleges, the students just pay to these project centers to do their projects, which is an absolute shame. That, I mean, you're studying engineering for 4 years, and if you still can't do a final year project, it's an absolute shame. And so what I used to do is I used to do that project for like 5,000 rupees for each project for my immediate juniors. I made quite a lot of money, close to 10-12 projects in that year. It's my first payout on doing something related to embedded. And that's when I clearly realized that, okay, embedded is the way forward. I can make half a decent embedded engineer someday later. And then I worked I joined one of the startups in Chennai. They were absolutely all over the place. They had no idea what they were doing. They are very low on funding. But the good thing, they closed down in 2 months. The good thing about is that that's when I learned the term Internet of Things. I was fresh engineer out of university, had nothing to lose. And that's when I learned the term Internet of Things and why it's so important, and why more and more devices are getting connected to internet. And that started closed down. And then from the college placement, where I had the placement, one of the IT companies, was I joined back Wipro. So this was more on core Java programming and COBOL related stuff, which I didn't really enjoy much, but quite a learning experience and exposure into the corporate world, how other software development works in terms of Java. First time I was in a project meeting using, they were not even using Agile, they were in the waterfall method, that's was first introduction to project management, managers, seniors, and those sort of concepts. And then absolutely I had this, I was hospitalized for a few months for health reasons. I had to drop out of Wipro. But when I got back my health much sooner than my sick leave ended. So I had like about a month gap before I went into join Wipro. So in the month's time, I went and joined this company called, it was not a startup, it was quite a big company. They were making fire alarms. This is also in Chennai. A company of about 50 people making fire alarms. I was so excited that I finally got to be an embedded company doing proper products. But there was actually only one embedded engineer doing all the coding. And the rest of them were just assembling products and shipping them. There was not much of a learning curve at all. And they were underpaying massively. But the team was to do this manuals for this fire alarm sensors. And that meant me that to read and dig a lot of data sheets and PCB designs, but not actual embedded coding. That's where I learned how to read a data sheet into where the resistors are, where the ICs are, look for the flow of signals, sizes, voltage levels, all from the data sheets. That's the only thing I've learned. Obviously, the place was really bad. I was not going to continue either. Going back to Wipro, still not happy with the IT, the trending technologies. The Java and COBOL was not really my cup of tea. And then I moved somewhere internally to do more of a Python in one of the Internet of Things projects. And at that time, Python was the one that was looked as the modern languages taking over because of its popularity, which quickly changed in the next 2 or 3 years, where all of Python is now being scrapped and replaced by Go. Going on to, then there was this interview in Hyderabad where they were trying to make a home automation project based on ESP8266 and an app connected. That's when I realized I again lacked a lot of very fundamentals, like how to do bit shifting and how to register interrupts, timers, those kind of things, which was again a big learning curve for me to go back and get into basics and the confidence to build something. So I was given an ESP8266 to start programming to get to do a certain task. So it's a certain approach when you are taking a new microcontroller, a new platform. You look at the data sheet, what are the requirements, what are the IDs. That was a learning missing skill I had to learn, even though I didn't make it in that interview. Going back, so that picture is more of hackathons. There should be quite a lot of hackathons happening in Hyderabad. Very, very knowledge based. A lot of them used to be on blockchain, Internet of Things, and electronics as well. I think irrespective of which stage of a career, two qualities are very important. One being awareness and third being adaptability. So being in these events, being in these conferences, even though I had no clue what's happening or what I understood, the key takeaway was that I was given exposure that what is coming, what people are talking about, and what are the skills that I can learn. These events and meetings were my learning, and talking to fellow engineers who were way ahead of me in terms of career, picking up their brains on what to study and what to jump on was great. And then I had my master's graduation. So this time I was in a graduate engineer role for Dyson. And again, I didn't get selected because certain questions were about more on volatile and constant things of C. which I was not very good at. Went back to more workshops, more embedded conferences. Went back to basics. Really started from scratch on certain C programming registers, and did a lot of learning and technology research. It was a consultancy that meant that I was able to work on multiple projects. Every 3 months there was a new project. Every 4 months was a new project. So it's more. It was a great place to learn for someone rather than a product-based company to do. And then more on exhibitions and expos, I was more on where meeting different stakeholders. So not everybody understands embedded systems, so language is very important. Some clients want a certain product, but they don't want to understand how the sensors works, how the microcontrollers work. Speaking in a language that all other engineers or even a front-end engineer will understand. So that was the learning thing. And then I worked for a company called Essences, which is also the access control video I showed up. So you can see here where they were using clearly more of FreeRTOS. So I switched this company because I realized that trend of embedded development is more on the cloud, more on IoT side of things from pure embedded, and that's the reason I switched. And by this time, FreeRTOS became a standard, which I identified in my first interview, and they were using expressive ESP32, which is the next generation of chip from ESP8266. So the chipset has evolved by the time I was here, and so I was working with Essences, implementing access control protocols. So we was working closely with SIA, which is a security agency for quite a lot of standards in the world. And so I found out a massive bug in their security, and it was quite an exploit. So we had this meeting with SIA, with my company, to figure out that bug and sort it out as a part of the security standards. And I was representing my Essences, and the person who was representing SIA is again Mr. Sid, the same person who rejected me in the first interview. So this was in Germany. It was nice to come back and cross paths and share how far we have come. And moving on with Dyson. So this time, when I went back and joined as a senior software engineer, the technology stack has changed. The importance of C has gone away, more into more prototyping languages like Go and containers. So most of their devices for quick prototyping, they use Balemarthy. So all of them had to run containers inside the Raspberry Pi. So there's also quite a lot of research happening using Rust in the embedded devices. It's not yet into the production, but it's clearly making its way. More on the emerging trends. What I've seen is just like what happened in front-end development, where the engineers used to be back-end engineer, front-end engineer, UI engineer, and then became a term called the full-stack engineer, where a particular engineer used to use the same framework or multiple framework to work from all the way from front-end to back-end. I started seeing that in embedded as well. When I met some of the extraordinary, legendary programmers who have just worked in C throughout their life, but I can see more and more responsibilities being added to a software developer, especially in embedded development. They're expected to know from hardware knowledge to embedded operating systems, and also the new network and messaging protocols. It's not just Wi-Fi and Bluetooth anymore. Thread and Matter are more and more popular. It's coming in more and more products. Matter is much more popular than we think. Again, system integration and testing, CAD knowledge with more 3D printing and PCB design. Even though you may not be a PCB designer, but you have the ability to go through that CAD design, suggest changes, find out discrepancy in certain resistor values or signal directions. That's very handy. Project management, I've not seen anybody use other than Atlassian tools, but they're more project management is project management. No matter which company you work for, which tool you use for the agile principles stays the same. And then is the cloud skills. Amazon has been the biggest player. There are other cloud players as well, but nothing comes close. So you can see the whole spectrum of skills makes it's not just an embedded programmer. You need to work a layer below, such as hardware, as well as go all the way above to cloud, where you may have to interact with multiple stakeholders. For example, I work closely with data scientists and app developers, because even though it's an IoT device, it's ultimately controlled from the mobile app. And we also do a lot of machine learning at edge. That means I have to be constantly in touch with my data scientist to fine-tune the model and refine the model, tune it with certain parameters so that it can run on edge. So the one I showed Tiny yesterday, we use it to run edge ML to testing. It's great. It can even run embedded Linux. It can even run Rust. We use it extensively for prototyping, and then move the code to a product intent hardware. And other emerging trends in the systems is not just about knowing I2C, SPI, those things anymore. So if you're looking at a resume, people would look for certain things. One of the things is the over-the-air updates, which has become a standard with more and more electrical vehicles being manufactured. OTA updates are the key. The first minimal MVP feature that's done in any product is over-the-air updates. I've just mentioned, and second thing is the cloud integration. The cloud integration principle stays the same, whether it's AWS or anything, but AWS is quite popular, irrespective of the size of the company, startup, medium scale, enterprise. Everybody uses AWS IoT, and that's been quite a standard. And third one is embedded Linux, which I'm still learning. I've not really mastered that, but I can. That's another very much of a skill in demand. More and more employers are looking for it. And the fourth is Docker containers. Docker containers are more common in front end and other development. It's probably the embedded system is the last one to catch up when it comes to Docker containers, but they're also getting popular. A lot of these developments are run inside the containers. There's something called dev containers from Visual Studio Code, which is being used in the industry quite a lot. And even for students, they should be taught about Docker containers as a standard skill. Then being the CI/CD pipelines, which is another, which I'll touch upon later, but that's also quite an expected skill. If any students or someone who wants working on a personal project, integrating this is very important. That shows how robust a project and the delivery of firmware can happen. And then it's the fleet management. This touches more on scalability. People use Balena, Goliath as more commonly in terms of fleet management, but they could also use their own custom tools for fleet management. And the last one being that ML at Edge, still a niche area coming up. Edge Impulse is a company that trains and offers courses on for ML at Edge. The courses are great. I would recommend anyone who wants to learn machine learning at Edge. Edge Impulse does a lot of it. It's a great course. Yeah, talking about the CI/CD, you can see even though IoT embedded developer, you can see there's quite a lot of heavy cloud involved. So even though you may be just working on the firmware side of it, but the actual journey of firmware delivery goes all the way. And that's why knowing cloud skills or understanding the end-to-end workflow gives you a little bit edge over just being an embedded engineer. And quite a lot of companies do not spend a lot of resources because this type of a setup, you set it up once and it stays. It's not necessarily an engineer has to maintain every day unless you're maintaining several hundreds and thousands of devices. So in a company, in a small company, or a medium scale company, it's a great advantage as an embedded engineer. You know how the CI/CD pipeline works, and if you're able to set it up. So it just starts with the user pushing a code, triggering the AWS code commit, the pipeline, and then it builds certain firmware, puts up in the S3 bucket, and then uses the IoT code to send that firmware file in little chunks over MQTT to the device. And so you can see how cloud and embedded overlaps in this journey. This is another example of an automotive OTA. So this is the clients. I'm not getting too much into it. This is a use case study where you could push firmware updates to AWS IoT through your VPC devices. So me talking about Docker containers, you can see the usage of the Docker containers inside the Linux machines. This app and container runtime are essentially Docker. Knowing this fundamentals of Docker really helps you in embedded development. It's not just writing C++ code anymore. It's more about packaging them, testing them, containerizing them, and deploying them. So that's also quite an important skill that helps you to get accustomed with the industry very quickly. That's all from me. Any questions in chat? Happy to answer. It's more of a casual chat. We could have that. Sorry if I had rushed that through.
Yeah, you can please unmute and actually ask questions. This is quite a unique session.
Couldn't hear you.
Yeah, because of late all the sessions that I had till now they don't talk about the latest things happening, but they spoke something which is already existing, and people, they feel from their perspective that they have to learn. But this session is unique. So please unmute and ask any question that you have. And for sure, I'm pretty much sure that you separately message Surender. He might be having time or he might not be having time. So this is an opportunity for you to ask what you have heard and understand a bit more.
Sorry, I lost what you said. I just turned on the audio back my PC. Could you repeat?
No, I'm just saying to the audience that they can't just get your time because you are in a job and you are busy. But these are times exclusively you have made for people to actually ask questions, concluding your presentation much early. So
feel free to message me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to respond. I could have a follow-up session if it requires.
Yeah, sure. So IoT testing is what people are asking about. Please tell me more about IoT testing.
So in terms of IoT testing, there is something called device in loop test. It's basically a device you run that runs in the loop in a firmware. So IoT testing is still not fully automated. A lot of that percentage is still done manually. For example, any new feature or new things are done manually. But what we could automate is the feature that are quite already exist in the system. So what in our industries, what we do is it's ultimately a Raspberry Pi sitting in the shelf, which is connected to the internet. Inside the Raspberry Pi, there will be something called a GitHub runner or Linux container that's running. So every time you push a commit to the master branch, which is firmware, this Raspberry Pi pulls that commit, downloads the code, it builds it into a binary. As you know, a binary is basically a hex file, irrespective of what the target is. It will be ESP32, STM32. Ultimately, it's a binary. So that binary is built in the Raspberry Pi, and with the Raspberry Pi, a certain microcontroller is connected over the USB. So this Raspberry Pi also runs a certain Python scripts or Go programming scripts, which flashes that built binary onto the microcontroller that is connected and keeps reading the logs for any errors or any warnings. If it's any errors, it reports it back as a form of email to the developer saying, this error happened, this many errors happened. And we run this test multiple times until this firmware is stable, and then we release it to the customers. So that's the IoT testing. What's the purpose of RTOS in IoT? It's real-time operating systems. Why it's in IoT? Because the traditionally microcontrollers, they does just one thing. For example, a light sensor microcontroller just detects a human person coming in or going on and turns on a light. It's like a light detection or a human detection sensor. So that's been the case in throughout. But recently, the microcontrollers have gone a long way. Or most of them have more than one core. The ESP32, for example, has 2 cores. That means it could run just like our computers, which has Intel i5 is 5 core, Intel i7 is 7 cores. Microcontrollers also come with 2 cores. So what happens is they run multiple tasks, multiple threads in parallel. So some of the threads can take care of Wi-Fi, communication, and other things, whereas other threads can take care of holding sensor data, while the rest of the threads can be responsible for user interface for a screen. So that means that in a single device, you can run multiple threads independent of each other and still communicating each other. So that's the importance of RTOS in IoT. FreeRTOS is quite common. Zephyr is more common. It's just to take advantage of the processing power of microcontrollers. What communication is not used most often in MQTT? I'm not sure. I've not heard of AMQP really. MQTT is used everywhere. Pretty much everywhere I've been, MQTT is more popular than I could imagine. In my case, I just finished electronics degree and I haven't had much time to do a deep research to be able to formulate interesting questions, but I've always liked the advantages of embedded systems writing. It's clearly what you enjoy. I'm not here to say that embedded is better than IT or anything. If you enjoy front end, if you enjoy React, all those things, then up to you. Could you please suggest a protocol to learn to enter into IoT domain? The must-have protocol is MQTT. MQTT is the protocol basics. And then MQTT is done over Wi-Fi or a local network. So MQTT is a messaging protocol, whereas Wi-Fi is more of a physical protocol. They sit in different layers of OSI model. So you need to connect all the layers to achieve application. So you can still use Wi-Fi and then MQTT on top of it to achieve a certain application.
Hello, Omkar from this side. So I am a 2023 pass out, okay, from a very tier 4 college where there is no placement, but with some hands-on knowledge of ESP32, then Raspberry Pi, and some of the Linux. I got a job of an IoT trainer at a Pune Institute, but I really wanted to land in a good company where I can learn or where I can contribute. In case of US, so how can I land into such a big companies as being a fresher?
Well, some learning is better than no learning. The fact that you are able to get a job as an IoT trainer is great. That means you learn something and you can learn something and then teach it to somebody else. So you have to identify the areas that are very relevant and in demand in IoT. That way you could learn as well as teach. Eventually you wanted to move to a company where IoT is actually being developed. So you also learn industry standards and industry process as well. So it's a great start to be an IoT trainer, but you have the power to choose what to teach. So it's up to you to build that on that. So does the build process happens on Git or cloud? It depends. It depends on, you can even have a container running in cloud. So the container in the cloud can build the image and then put it in an S3 bucket and then to the device. Or you could have a Linux machine, such as simple as Raspberry Pi, pulling the Git repository from cloud, builds it locally and flashes it to the microcontroller connected. It depends on the type of firmware. Anything else?
And there's a question that is being asked in microcontroller selection: what is the minimum size required to implement IoT and RTOS stacks? What is your advice?
In terms of thread and stacks, you could really have a lean FreeRTOS. If you go to the FreeRTOS, it shows the minimum RAM required. It could run in as something as simple as Arduino or as big as a Windows PC. So the size, it's really for memory contained devices. So it's not really about the size. In terms of what you need, for example, the FreeRTOS, if you bring in Wi-Fi stack, which is quite heavy, if you bring in Bluetooth stack, which is again an extra overload, and then there is TCP stack. So all this will beef up the firmware. So it depends on the application. If you're just using FreeRTOS with Bluetooth, it's much smaller binary size than a project that uses both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Whereas the binary size of a project that just uses UART is much more smaller. So it really depends on the application. But FreeRTOS is quite a lean project, so it could run on most devices. How to get training at your company? The trainers are like you're seeing here, or company connect with. Not really. With training, it's for me at the initial stage. Not many company where I worked in startups, they didn't have budget for training. Most of them has been part of my job where I go back home, learn on how to do certain things at the job. So it's really about the learning. I really haven't spent so much money on a certain course or anything. For example, it's mostly the YouTube tutorials where people do it for free. AWS does a lot of seminars and webinars for students to come and train. They also have a student like a what is it called? Training environment where you could run certain IoT services and get trained on. You won't get certificate, but you still have the chance to train using their services. For certain startups, AWS gives a budget as well, certain budgets in terms of credits that they could use both for training and development. I have no clue about optical wireless communication. I'm not sure what you mean. Do you mean by optical fiber or if it's or anything? I quite don't get what optical wireless communication means. Are you talking about something like the one that communicates over light?
Hello, many expert peoples, many experienced people from embedded IoT are opening their institutes or turning their career into education. Okay, and being a fresher, I really love the teaching where I'm teaching as an IoT trainer. Would you see a future? Is it in a training or I want to be a trainer at corporate level? So is there will be happening?
I believe it depends on what you teach, right? If you're teaching something that not many people knows, then people will pay for that. It really depends on what you teach. Just IoT stuff, general IoT wouldn't make much of a difference because quite a plenty of content is available already. For example, I have taught some courses for some of the edtech platforms. Some of them are more in depth of AWS IoT, which tended to sell well, but something very basic did not do very well. So it really depends on what you have to be ahead of in terms of trends and including that in your syllabus if you're teaching. So that's the key.
Yeah, can I add a few more lines? Hello?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So Onkar, typically, in my experience, many people contacted me who on LinkedIn who are trainers. But then, as Surender said, what they teach actually matters, and they don't really teach the stuff. They call themselves as IoT trainers, but what they teach, I have noticed, is just Arduino and some already available source code. But given a requirement, give them not a requirement, a problem statement, they are not able to do anything. I mean, they completely freeze. They don't know what to do. They can't even speak. And I'm talking about people who claim themselves as knowing IoT, and they came for interviews and I have interviewed them. So I would say these kind of jargon and all those things are good. And also you're being paid something, so you say that, okay, I'm getting paid. But then I would say very honestly that you are not working to the fullest of your potential, and you are doing something which is in fact killing your time. Rather, you could have put it into learning something much more valuable that the industry needs. Because after 1 year, you turn back and see it's very tough to get the job. Not because you can't do it, but the competition already, you have always the compounding effect working. You have the past batches, the new batch, your competitors. So you need to be very, very careful with your early career. Like what happened to Surender, like, he did not go to any course, but the experience in startups actually taught him what it is.
Yeah, in terms of embedded hardware engineer, I think KiCad is a software where you can make open source PCB designs. Start with something basic like a mobile charger or a battery charging circuit. Make your designs like a portfolio, publish it in your GitHub or any other CAD design websites. Start with simple designs, and over time extend the design into a bit more complex with a screen, with the buttons, with more sensors. That's it really, and that portfolio should be good enough for you to land a job. You don't even need a resume. In terms of community sites for embedded people like CodeChef, mostly, well, I follow LinkedIn. A lot of people like Balemarthy sir and other people, they often share resources to look and study from. A lot of people share study notes for ESP32 or FreeRTOS all the time. Every time I see something, I bookmark it so that I can go back and read it. If you get stuck in any programming stuff, I tend to post it on Reddit. If I'm working on any personal project, any technical challenge I had, every time I put it on Reddit, there's a bunch of people commenting on it, helping me solve it. Reddit has been helpful to solve a lot of coding stuff for me, rather than other websites. In a startup where I'm working on an industrial project, but I want to get more professional in this domain, just want to get more upskilled. I think in terms of more professional, you should be, it's just not the programming skills, more on the project management styles, more on your documentation skills, which what differentiates between someone who's very professional and not so professional. Even if you're working in a startup, you should be the one leading the culture of documentation, setting up certain code standards. Even though there are no standards in your startup, you should be the one leading on and sticking to the standards. And that's how you become professional, by making the environment around you be professional.
Now, Siddesh, one more point is, I do not know how many years of experience you have, because companies don't, some startups are exception, I understand, but companies will not allow people to really touch the core of the code unless and until they know that this person is capable, because they can't afford to reverse the mistakes that are done by people who are new to the system. And if there is a very big pipeline, first of all, to understand the pipeline and all those things, I mean, forget about the pipeline, even to understand the big piece of code takes time. So you make something an issue somewhere, and somebody has to sit overnight to just fix the issues that you have created. Nobody would like that. So professional in this domain, it's really the requirement, but it doesn't happen in a short span of time. You have to go through the hard path of you reading a lot of code and writing a lot of code, reviewing other people's code. So it's a journey that you need to take. So I would say for all the people who are working in startups and small companies, if you think that is the world, which I know you are not thinking, but then you need to act as if it is not the world, end of the world or something, and start doing on your own, which will teach you more about anything. Maybe need not be even IoT. You pick up anything and be proficient with ARM architecture, be really good with it. IoT is just an application, and it has been there since long. And I would suggest for people who are interested in IoT to read a book called The Silent Revolution. It's a very, very good book, The Silent Revolution. You will really appreciate it. So many insights, just 120 or 130 pages, The Silent Revolution. Initially, I thought it's not an IoT book, but then I learned a lot. It talks about how the IoT things actually started by connecting one, I think, refrigerator or vending machine. And earlier days of IoT, it's used to be called as machine-to-machine communication. So you will see all the growth coming up, so many things. And then there's a book from Cisco Press on IoT. It's a must book to read if you are really serious about IoT. It was written in, I think, 2016 or 2017, still relevant today. Especially the use cases of IoT across mining field, oil and gas, many other things. So read lot of books, read lot of code.
Yeah, just to add to that, IoT it's been around since 1999 from RFID projects all the way. It's just a new term. It's more in demand. Same like machine learning. It's been in the form of math for so many years. It's just that we have actually started seeing it in applications only today. But the convolution theorems, all the algorithms have been there for several years. It's just that we are implementing it today.
Yeah,
and
IoT fundamental by Cisco Press, yes.
Yeah, Cisco sets the standards of IoT. They have a definition for IoT and all the benchmarks for IoT as well.
Cisco actually calls it IoE, Internet of Everything. And they are really going big with that.
Yeah, like even if you take another example is Vodafone, which we all know as a mobile network company, but in the last 5 years, almost 70% of the business revenue is coming from just implementing IoT solutions. It's just that they are targeting certain industries and selling it. It's not that anything new.
You're talking about Oracle or Verizon? Vodafone, yeah. Large telecom players are also entering it. Even Verizon also has a lot of turnkey solutions for IoT.
Yeah, and even IT companies are becoming more product oriented, creating more IoT platforms so that they could onboard most of their customers onto the platform. It's just changing from service and project structure to more of a product structure. Even banks are going to, every bank now wants to start up within their company, small startup like environments, just to be more innovative and fast with their products. So the question is how freelancing project matters to embedded engineer. Even she is working as an employee. I quite didn't get the question.
No, he's saying that he wants to do some side projects. Even though he's part of a company, he wants to do some side projects.
Yeah, if it doesn't mess with your work, you should do. If you're able to learn much more quicker by working on a much diverse projects, it's a great opportunity. I think, why not? It just adds to your resume, to your skills. Your GitHub profile just gets better with more projects. That's it.
Yeah, most of my mentees are working and they are doing. I think Arul is my mentee and he's there, and I think Bharat is also there. They all are my mentees, and they do side projects in the mentoring session, and it has nothing to do with their regular day-to-day work. And they are seeing that their knowledge actually gets multiplied. So you should do a project which is, don't call it freelancing because nobody is going to buy, but do a project which is worthwhile, that you have a problem statement and you are solving a problem. For heaven's sake, don't pick up Arduino and just quote it and say that I have done IoT project. Do not ever put it. You're doing an injustice to your resume. I mean, you're doing an injustice to yourself. Okay, any more questions? Else we can conclude the call. Before that, I request people to please be on camera so that we can take a photo shot. Thanks Ajay, Narendra, Arul, Bharat, Shakil. Let me close the thing. 3. Sanmitra. Very wrong entry, but right entry because we are taking the photos. 3, 2, 1, go. Thanks a lot. This recording also will be uploaded very soon after processing, and you will find a post that I would be sending. Yeah, if you are following me. Thanks a lot, Surender.
Thank you, sir. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Sure. So maybe you can share your LinkedIn profile. I have anyways tagged you in the post as a speaker, so they should be able to find you if they have seen the post. Else, if you can just put your LinkedIn profile here.
Yeah, I'll try to do that. 1 second.
So let me also share my Calendly link also for people if they have something to talk and if any discussion with me can help them. Yeah.
All right. Sure. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Yes. So I'm sharing my Calendly link. So people who wants to discuss for their queries, you can reach out to me by booking a slot. Yeah. Thanks a lot and see you all soon. So that's my Calendly link. You can copy paste that and people who want to discuss, just book a session. You will get a Zoom link and we can discuss if you have anything. See you all and happy weekend.